Good afternoon. Welcome to Gender Speaker Live. And today I'm talking about a really tough topic. We're going to be talking about hate crime. And I've got with me the founder of Stop Hate UK, Rose Simkins. So let's get... So welcome, Rose, to Gender Speaker Live. Gosh, it's been a long time that we've known each other right back from your beginning, haven't you? 2007.
Yes. I'd say it's about 14 years, isn't it?
Yeah, I was looking. So you actually started. Let's get this right. You actually started the whole thing in 1995. That's 25 years.
Well, the organisation started in 1995. We were Leeds Racial Harassment Project. So I joined in 2006 and so founded the Stop Hate UK element of it.
Right, okay.
So my history goes back to January 2006 and we met soon after that.
Yes, it was. I'd left university and got involved with social enterprises and everything else like that. Yeah, so it must have been a challenging time because I know you have a huge amount of resistance for some reason from local authorities to sign. They all want to do it themselves, don't they?
Yes, it has been a long battle. It continues to be, but we've made a lot of progress in that time. And basically, it is about trying to working with local authorities, with police, with many types of organisations, and helping them see how working with us can just kind of add to their own strategies, so they don't have to do everything themselves. So if they work with us, they can use our 24-hour reporting and support service without having to recreate something similar for themselves. So it can provide the foundation for their local strategy. And so a lot of my work is just sort of persuading them that, hate crime is a massive issue that we still haven't dealt with properly as a collective. And so by partnering with Stop Hate UK, we can support each other to do that bit more, because there's a lot to be done.
I was looking at the stats, and I must say I haven't been much involved because I've sort of, when Gender Shift went down because funding all disappeared, I sort of took a little bit of backseat and went into semi-retirement, but I'm back. But these figures have shocked me. Hate crime 2019-20, 105,000 recorded incidents with the police. That's compared to the 57,000 5 years ago. I mean, that's doubled in 5 years.
Yes, but we would still argue that that's a gross underestimate of the number of incidents that actually take place. So what we're sure about is that reporting and recording has got better in that time. So if you report it, it's more likely to be properly recorded. But there are still growing numbers of kind of people who will never report for all different sorts of reasons. And so our strong belief at Stop Hate UK is that those figures are only part of the iceberg. I wouldn't necessarily just the tip, but part of the iceberg. And there's still a lot of work we've got to do.
There were some stats a couple of years ago showing that the numbers of trans people who had experienced is something like 97% of I can't remember. There were a quite large proportion of trans people have basically had hate crimes or hate incidents involved, but 97% didn't report it.
Yeah. Well, I've spoken to people who said that they experience 6 incidents a day on a regular basis.
6 incidents a day.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to people who, were on their way to a hate crime meeting and have got abused in the street on their journey. Frighteningly so, I've been in an event which was headed by a police and crime commissioner with a general audience of people who were there to get awards, funding awards. And there was an incident in the room there were police officers in the room. There was a police and crime commissioner was in the room, and myself and some other colleagues from other organisations had to escort people out of the room because of the trans hate that they were expressing. So there was a mixture of supporting the individuals that were being targeted, and actually removing people. And this was so that the audacity, the confidence, that people don't even feel they have to hide it, and that's really
It's reminded me
frightening.
of a quite humorous story. I was asked to chair or MC and facilitate a meeting around hate crime and such, like, being run by Humberside Police. And there were a couple of young actresses going to be doing some work just to look at, demonstrate. It was a dance and stuff, which is a very much a community organized thing. So I had a chat with them before, and I said, look, I want you to do me a favor. Just before you go on, I'd like you to come in and really harangue me and give me a lot of hassle on the stage. And the audience was made up of all sorts of people from there was at least 40 police officers there of various different ranks, including some very high rank. I even think the chief of police for Hull was there. So anyway, they came in and they did this whole thing, and it was so realistic that there were 2 police officers about to intervene and arrest the 2 actors. But it was all designed to just show. And
they were doing all.
You mustn't swear. I said, oh, for God's sake, hate crimers swear. They said, oh, no.
Yes, yeah. It is something that you can't get away from how awful it is in terms of the language and the behaviour. And so if we are shy about saying it, how are we going to be able to tackle it? Because we've got a bit of face up to what it is. And too many people just don't report it, and sometimes because they don't think they'll get the support or understanding, and too many people stand by and let it happen. And so
let's talk about that, because this is obviously the I know a lot of people are quite scared. A lot of people tell me, particularly trans people, and LGBT people, which obviously my audience tends to be from the LGBT community, or people who are looking at that as an issue. And for a lot of people, the danger that they have is that if they report it and the perpetrators are tackled about it, it will just escalate and they will get more and more, and it will get worse and worse. That's the big fear.
That's an understandable fear, but that fear needs to be expressed to the people you're reporting it to, and they need to understand and support and do whatever they can to prevent that happening. So I think there are risks. There are in confronting what's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's about that joint responsibility to try and reduce those risks. So we do understand, when people report to Stop Hate UK through the 24-hour helplines, we know
report you.
Yes,
you are a reporting line, so they can actually report to you.
Yes, yeah. The problem for us, Rick, is we're still not universally funded across the UK, so it's not a UK-wide service. So people have to check whether we cover their area. But when people do contact us, immediately we understand how hard it must have been for them to make the call. And how hard it is for them to talk about what's happening, and the fear, as you say, of what might happen next. So our job is trying to reduce that, try to make people feel safer and empowered, because haters are just trying to take power away from people. So it's about the empowerment. But in terms of standing up, but it's people who witness and observe what's going on. And actually, when you talk to people about what hate crime is and what it can look like, people suddenly realise, they think, actually, I've seen stuff like that. And
so talk us through a few of the things.
Yeah, sorry.
What sort of things then?
Somebody might be on a train, and someone on another seat sort of makes comments, or refuses to sit next to somebody, or deliberately sits next to them to intimidate them. I've been on train journeys where people have been abusive to somebody because of their identity, And it's about what do other people do when this happens. So one part of the work that we do is about supporting people and training them to intervene safely. So we'd always say never put yourself at risk. We can't advise people to do that, but is there a safe way that you can intervene? So it might be that at a distance you can go and get support, you could call emergency services. You might be in a position where you could go and sit next to the person who's being targeted and smile and talk to them and distract, what's happening, and show the person that they're not on their own. Because the fear that people kind of have is that no one's going to stand up for me. I'm here. What happens when I leave, when I walk away? Is the attack is there a physical attack going to happen? So we say to people there are opportunities sometimes to sit with people, or if there isn't, even after the event, go and speak to the person. Are you okay? Because what people tell us is that what they see, if nobody supports or intervenes or talks to them, they believe everybody is of the same opinion as the targeter, the attacker. They think, well, everyone feels like that. And and through your session the other week, Ricky, where you talked about that whole life of fear and covering up and pretending, and that has an impact on people. And if then when you're in that situation, you think, oh, well, they didn't support me, they must think the same. And so we always say there is a responsibility for us all to just to show somebody that they're not on their own, and that we might have gathered evidence by filming something or recording it from a distance. And in West Yorkshire and Surrey, we have an app that people can use for that. So there's a way that you can help, even just providing a witness statement afterwards, because you saw it and you saw the identity of the attacker. So it's to think about, not this, oh, I better not intervene, it might get, something might happen to me, or I'm in a hurry. It's actually thinking about the individual, because if it was you, wouldn't you want somebody to step in or show you some support? So in the hate crime world, these are called upstanders, people who are willing to be active citizens, who are willing to either intervene or be a witness or be a supporter, to show their support. And we can do that online as well.
So if even, for example, because I've had situations where people have been a little bit intimidating, and I was very lucky one day. I was walking down a street in Hull, and somebody decided that it was 11 o'clock at night, and being brought up originally male, I never thought any problem about walking down the street at 11 o'clock at night, because then I discovered it can be a bit scary on your own. I was just a lone woman on my own walking down the street, and suddenly I got somebody trying to chat me out. Well, I was lucky. After about 5 minutes, I happened to see a friend of mine and just grabbed his arm and said, "Hey, you need to be with me for a few minutes while we walk out the way." And that got rid of him. But I don't know what would have happened, because I was heading somewhere and it wasn't a lot of people around, and we're walking past a park, and I'm thinking, oh God, is this going to get, how bad is this going to get? I mean, does that, as an incident, just for a woman sitting on a train and somebody coming and sitting in and does that constitute a hate incident?
Well, it can be a hate incident if you think it's a hate incident, because the whole idea is around perception. That sort of was introduced after the inquiry into the murder of Stephen Lawrence, where it was very firmly established that if you think it's a hate crime, then it should be recorded and as one. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to be arrested or go to jail. There has to be evidence that something has happened. So incidents, people talk about incidents rather than crimes often, and sometimes an incident in itself isn't a crime. The police can't get involved. But sometimes an incident can be repeated, or it can escalate into a crime. So yes, you're right. Someone coming to sit next to you to intimidate you is not necessarily, a hate crime. But if you think it's happening to target you, then that is your experience, and you should be supported accordingly. But interesting, this year, I mean, more and more people after the killing of George Floyd, and more and more people are talking about microaggressions, and they are aggressive acts that are sometimes so subtle that people don't recognize them for what they are. And at Stop Hate UK, we've talked about this, since 2006. We introduced the Whatever They Call You, Call Us, on the basis that some things are so subtle that we don't necessarily know they're happening. And as individuals who might be targeted, and that might be as a woman, it might be because you're black, it could be because you're gay, or because you're trans. There's all different sorts of reasons why that might be. And if that's happening to you, it's having an impact. So it's really around, but you also think, did that really happen? Am I because you're always being told, oh, it's you, it's your identity that's the problem, So actually we start to think, did that really happen? Was that really deliberate? Am I imagining it? But we know that perpetrators deliberately do these things. They deliberately do them. They do them under the radar so that they can just say, oh, I didn't mean that. What are you
about? Difficult to pin it down, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I don't think most people get what harassment is in this country anymore, because everybody thinks harassment is aggressive and it's violent and everything else. But actually, harassment is any unwanted behavior which creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, or humiliating environment. So anything which makes you feel really uncomfortable is harassment. If it keeps on happening and people keep on doing it, and for trans people, that's a simple thing like refusing to acknowledge that I'm female, refusing to accept me as non-binary, using dead names, and 3 out of 5 people purposely misgender trans people. Just purely because they don't agree with it. And
so people call these microaggressions, but there's nothing micro about the impact.
Not at all.
And actually, I think there's a deliberate choice by the perpetrator to do these things because it's harder to pin them down. If they punched you in the face, then people would recognize it for what it is. If they make you feel very uncomfortable and by misgendering or misnaming you, it can be as deliberate, and it can be as damaging, or sometimes even more damaging to individuals. I think your point about harassment made me think of stalking. Gives us a really good example of the red rose. I always quote the red rose on the doorstep. The red rose on the doorstep is a deliberate act to intimidate and harass and scare an individual by saying, I'm here, I know where you are, and I can walk up to your door anytime I like. And most people would not recognize it as an aggressive act or an intimidating act, but the individual knows full well what that red rose on the doorstep means. And I think it's around us all recognizing that within hate crime there are different versions of that type of incident, and deliberately misgendering is often done. It's nasty, and it's meant to hurt, and it can be the sign that something else might happen.
I think it's a good moment to show a video of which I picked off your YouTube channel, because I've only just seen it an hour ago, and it really shocked me because it made me realize just particularly how badly young people face it. And I think maybe for anybody watching, this will be helpful. It's only 2 minutes and a bit disturbing, but I think it's worth watching. So let's just show that for a second. Maybe we can have a chat about the implications from this.
Okay, bye.
So that's quite disturbing. I know that my partner Jamie did a lot of work when she was, or when they were, about 19, was working with HIV/AIDS when at the end of the 80s, and just having an HIV ribbon on their Facebook page got them death threats and horrible hate comments. I've got a couple of videos online, a TED talk, and I'm shocked sometimes at some of the things that people say on there. And I think people don't realize just how much horrible hate comes online now, do they? From all different directions. Everybody thinks of hate as a physically violent thing happening, but it's not, is it? It's
No.
happening all the time. It's quiet. It's just insidious. And
it follows you wherever you go, and that's you can't. There is no getting away from it. And I mean, all the quotes in the video were things that we have had through our helpline. So they're all based on real events. And no matter how many times I watch that video, it's really chilling. But it wasn't that many years ago where police officers would tell people to take their profile down and not go online. I think I see it the same as don't go out your front door, because actually
it's like, well, not lock the door and just let nobody find you.
Yeah, because we find out our news, we communicate with our family, and particularly more during COVID, but even generally, this is how we communicate with our family and friends and keep in touch with our networks and learn. So it's no longer a choice about being on or offline. And what's happening is that things, particularly for younger people, are moving on and offline all the time. So something happens outside, when you get home, you get a message on your social media. So they're not separate. And I mean, people don't always realize that they can't write these things online. And basically, the internet is a public space. So if you can't say it in the town centre, shout it out in the town centre, you can't say it online. And people don't realize that they're committing a criminal offence. So a lot of the work we do at Stop Hate UK is around supporting people who want to know how to get things taken down, how to talk to the social media companies, how to talk to the police, how to be safe. And we do a lot of work around safe interventions. The upstander principle works online as it's same as it does on the train.
Right. So it's the same thing. If somebody's having problems with hate incidents online, if they fall within your area, I'll put up the list now for anybody that's interested. Watching this, stophateuk.org is the website. Facebook.com is stop.hate.uk. Find lots of information there, lots of videos. I've noticed it's kept up to date quite regularly, isn't it?
Oh yes,
so you've got lots of things on there. People might also want to put down the number. That's your general hate crime number, isn't it?
Yes, that's the 24-hour help.
24. Now, talk to me a little bit about the LGBT hate, because this is actually funded by the Equality and Human Rights Commission.
Well, it was it was a project that's actually ended. It's like many. One of the frustrating things of working in hate crime, as you know, as I said at the beginning, I've been doing this for nearly 15 years at Stop Hate UK, is that too many hate crime projects come and go. And what we're trying to undo is decades, centuries of prejudice and fear. And so you can't, a hate crime project that lasts a matter of months or a year or so, what it will have an impact, but not a lasting impact, and not as big as it should be. No. So what we're interested in is long-term, sustainable, about building relationships, building trust, making a difference and change. So you can't run a service for a year or two and then think, well, that wasn't very effective. You need to really invest in it over time.
It becomes a political issue, doesn't it?
And so, unfortunately, it was always intended to be a short-lived project, the LGBT line that was, say, across the country. It was only a short term. I think it was about 15 months, 18 months, something like that. But and we've been fighting ever since for longer term universal funding. But say too often money is invested in short-term projects, and so the fight continues to how do you make sure that people wherever they are in the UK can get equal access to support, consistently high standard support. And postcode lottery, as they say. Yeah,
look at the numbers now and I think this should be right at the top of every local authority's list of things that they need to tackle, because it's obviously affecting everywhere. So the most important thing I think everybody's got to do, and they can't all report to us, so I didn't put it down here, but I will just mention here True Vision. Now, if you look at True Vision, I haven't got a link for True Vision at the moment. So, but True Vision is the police thing. But even that doesn't cover all police forces, does it? It's
all police forces in England.
Oh, it does cover them all now.
And there is, I think there is a Scottish equivalent. It's reported.org, and it's online reporting to the police. And they've got a lot of resources on the site as well. So it's worth having a look at the different resources and to see whether they might help you. So it's just important, I would say to people, find out what's in your local area, test it out. And if you don't think there's enough or it's good enough, talk to your police and crime, contact your police and crime commissioner and say, what are you doing? Because some areas have good local services and some have don't. So I think regardless of whether you want to follow the Stop Hate UK model or not, you can still campaign for something better in your area. So I would always say to people, check out what's there. Check it out before you need it, because you don't want to be worrying when you need it. And as you said, Ricky, you look at Stop Hate UK's resources, because even though the helpline might not run in your area, there's still lots of resources on our site that you can and on our social media.
Yes, and if people go to the Stop Hate website, you'll find a list of all of the areas where Stop Hate is working, which is quite big. I mean, a lot of the Midlands area, a lot of West Yorkshire particularly is covered very well. Newcastle, Merseyside, I noticed all of those, and a fairly significant number of London boroughs now.
Yeah, and increasing all the time. We've got 2 new London boroughs coming on at the beginning of next year.
Excellent.
We've got 2 new apps coming in early next year. So if your area is not on there now, it might be later on. But just check out what happens locally. Check it out.
The most important thing, and I'm also going to mention in a second, let's just make a do this. So we've got reportit.org. So if at any stage you see a hate incident. And a hate incident is anything where somebody is being really harassed, made to feel uncomfortable, made to feel threatened. If you feel threatened, if you feel something's going on, I had an incident for for a month. Kids throwing stones at my house, breaking windows every night, and it just was relentless. And I can tell you, I was really, really frightened when that happened. This was back in 2006, because I think I've told you about this story. I got it into the press. I got all sorts of things, but I was still really, really frightened about what was happening, because 20 kids, 12 to 15 years old, coming up, a dark, unlit back street along where I lived, and throwing stones at the house, breaking windows, and throwing mud at the front. It can be quite frightening. Just a group of kids standing around where you normally shop, making comments before you go into the shop, out there and jeering at you as you come out. That's all the kind of thing which actually is it's unlawful. It's harassment. It's hate incidents. And even if nothing has actually happened and you're not physically attacked or anything like that, it still needs to be reported, because it's only by reporting it that the police know where things are happening. We've got one particular park in Hull where lots of things happen. There's never been any well, there have been a few bad incidents, but there's been very few bad incidents. But there are lots and lots of these micro incidents happening all the time. And it's by constantly reporting it, the police know that there is a problem, and then they make sure there is a presence in those areas to try and stop it. So reportit.org.uk. And the other place, the one I use all the time, is 101, which is the non-emergency police line, if it's something there. And I'm not sure whether that applies across the country, does it, Rose?
Yes, yeah.
So 101 is it's an easy number to remember. That's the easiest one across the country. Just phone 101, gets you into the police non-emergency. This is 999 if you're in serious danger. But if it's something that's passed, if you're a witness, if you saw something happening, if your friend happened to your friend, even if you've been told about it, and they're terrified, just report it anonymously. It doesn't matter. The police need to know things are happening. And if you're in the right area and you simply want to talk to someone, though, that's where Stop Hate UK can really, really start to help, isn't it? Because I think for a lot of people, it's just being able to talk to somebody about. I think people suddenly they feel a bit silly, don't they? Particularly young guys, and they think, "Oh, I shouldn't have been frightened by that. It shouldn't," but it is frightening.
Yeah, people want so many different things when they contact us. Some people want advice on how to speak to the police or how to gather evidence. Some people just want to be listened to, and some people want to be I just want someone to believe me. Yeah. So I always say, whatever you need to tell us what you need in that conversation. It's not an automatic, it's not a form filling thing. It's not, tell us what happened, and if it's get off the line type thing. It's a real conversation about what happened, what you want to happen next, what you need. And it is so very, very different. And so many people just say, thank you. No one's ever listened to me before. No one's believed me. Yeah. And that's really important for people, just to validate their experience. And one thing I always say is, just because there isn't any evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. And just because there isn't any evidence today doesn't mean there won't be tomorrow. So never be put off for reporting by saying, well, I can't prove it, that I haven't got any evidence. You never know what's going to happen next, and what other people might report. So don't let that put you off at all.
Rose, it has been absolutely brilliant talking to you again about this. And I hope that everyone who sees this will get the idea. The only way to stop hate is actually to report hate. And then, once people realize that this is going to be reported and there will be consequences, it will start to stop.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here. I'm just going to finish off the show with a couple of little bits and pieces here. I've got, this is going to be going on to my YouTube channel. It's also going to be on my blog post, so you can find details of that. Gender Speaker Live on YouTube channel, and the podcast. If you just look at your ordinary podcast episode, this will be going up there within a couple of days. For that, I'll be back on Sunday for some more LGBTQ history, and it would be great if you could join me there. For now, thank you for being with me, and look forward to seeing you soon.